Hi, dear students. Today we look into one of the most iconic and beloved stories of modern literature, Harry Potter. Now, this is prescribed in your MDC course, Pop Culture. So, let's open our minds to the magic within the pages of Harry Potter. Now, this world famous literary work was written by the British author J.K. Rowling, and she created the Harry Potter series, which has captivated millions of readers around the world. Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone is the first book in the series, which was published in the year 1997. Now, this is a fantasy novel. You see many magical adventures in this novel, but along with that, we also see that it is a story about friendship, about courage, about the power of love, about wonder, mystery, and danger. So you find all these themes wrapped in a spellbinding narrative. Now, after the success of the first book, released in 1997, it was followed by several other series like Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets, Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban, Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire, like that. And seeing the immense popularity of the book, it was even adapted into films. The first book, Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone, was adapted into a film in 2001. So, here in your pop culture syllabus, you are prescribed the first chapter of the first book of Harry Potter, called The Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone. Chapter 1 of the first book is titled The Boy That Lived. As the story begins, we are introduced to the Dursley family. The Dursley family consists of three members: Vernon Dursley, Petunia Dursley, and Dudley Dursley. Vernon Dursley is the head of the Dursley family. Now, as the image shows, he is described as a large, fat man. He's called a beefy man with a big moustache. He works as a director for a firm called Grunnings. And this firm manufactures drills. Drill is a tool used for making holes on the wall. So he is the director of that company called Grunnings. Now, the second character is his wife, Petunia Dursley. She is depicted as a thin, blonde woman with a long neck. She is often described as a turkey. She is a woman who is very much concerned with appearances and social status. And the third character of this Dursley family is Dudley Dursley, who is the son of Vernon and Petunia. He is their only child, and he is described as a spoiled, overweight boy. And he is a very arrogant boy with aggressive behavior towards his parents as well as others. So, these are the three characters of the Dursley family. Now, this family, they don't like anything very strange or mysterious. They always like to be very normal. Now, the street that they live is called the Privet Drive. And you see a very ordinary world in that place. And this family leads a very normal and ordinary life. But they have a secret. And their greatest fear is that one day somebody will discover it. Now, what is their secret? The secret is that Mrs. Petunia Dursley has a sister. Her sister's name is called Lily Potter. Her family consists of her husband, Mr. James Potter, and her infant son, Harry Potter. But Petunia is not in a good relationship with her sister, and they haven't met for several years. It's like Mrs. Dursley She pretends that she doesn't have a sister, and she doesn't talk to anybody about her sister. So, the Dursley family's greatest fear is that one day they appear before them and everybody gets to know that she has a sister and a family. The Dursleys have not met Harry Potter. They know that her sister has a son, but they haven't met the child as yet. So, this is what we get to know about the Dursley family and the Potter family. So, one day, it is morning, it is around 8 o'clock. Mr. Dursley takes his briefcase. He bids goodbye to his wife and son. He gets into his car and he's about to leave for work. It was then that he notes something peculiar, something very strange, okay, something unusual. Now, what does he see? He sees a cat reading a map. Okay, so he's shocked. How can a cat read a map? So he looks at that cat, and when he looks a second time, he doesn't see the map. Okay, so Mr. Dursley blinks his eyes. He again stares at the cat, and then the cat stares back at Dursley. So after that, he drives his car through the road, but as he is moving, he looks through the mirror. He looks at the cat through the mirror of his car, and he again sees that the cat is looking at a signboard or a name board. There is written Privet Drive. The name of the street is written there, and he sees that the cat is looking at that name board. So he finds something strange. Now, after some time, he forgets this unusual sight and he's driving. He's thinking about his business, his office work, and everything. But as he is driving, he sees a second unusual sight. Now, what is that? He's driving through the city, through the road, and then there is a traffic jam, which is very usual. But then, as he has stopped his car and is waiting at the traffic, he notices something strange again. He sees many people, and they are people in cloaks. Okay, so he sees a lot of people on the road, and they're all wearing cloaks. So that is also very strange, very unusual. So he didn't understand anything. He felt that it is some stupid new fashion. But he was looking at these people and he found that they all were very excited. They all seemed very happy. And after some time, the traffic moved and Mr. Grunnings drove the car and he arrived at his office, Grunnings. Now, in his office, he was sitting. His office is situated on the 9th floor. So he was sitting there. And in that office room, there is a window. And through that window, we see that there are a lot of owls flying in broad daylight. Owls usually fly at night, right? They are nocturnal birds. But this is daylight, but you see a lot of owls flying. That is yet another unusual sight. But Dursley doesn't see it. He doesn't notice this. He's engaged in his work. But the people on the streets, they noticed this unusual sight. Many other people. Dursley didn't see it, but many other people on the streets, they watched this unusual sight. And they were all excited. They were all surprised. Why is it that a lot of owls are flying, and that too on daytime? And then after some time, Dursley, after doing some work, he gets down. He walks through the street to the next baker. Okay, he goes there to get some food, and there on the road he sees a lot of people wearing cloaks. So he was looking at them. He felt very uneasy at their dress. And he watched them and he found that they were whispering something. They were talking very excitedly. Okay. And then he heard one of them saying, so, what did they say? They said, the Potters. That's right. That's what I heard. Yes, their son Harry. So he heard this. He heard somebody saying this, somebody mentioning the names of Potters, Harry, etc. And he was shocked. There was fear arising in his mind. It was very evident on his face. Okay? So he dashed back across the road and he hurried back to his office. And then he quickly took his telephone. He wanted to talk to his wife. He wanted to tell her about what he heard. But then suddenly he decided, okay, no, if I tell her this, she will be upset. I will tell her once I get back home. Okay? And after that, he found it very difficult to concentrate on his work. He was connecting all these things. He was thinking about the cat, then the people wearing cloaks. Then in the radio, he has also heard about the flight of the owls. So he was thinking all about this. And the person who mentioned the name of Harry and Potter. So he was so shocked. He couldn't concentrate. He was so worried. Okay. So that evening, by 5 o'clock, he got down and he was uh, going back to his house. Just then, downstairs, he collided with a tiny man. And the tiny man almost fell. And Dursley looked at this man and he saw that he was also wearing a cloak. Okay? And Dursley was trying to say sorry for not noticing him and colliding with him. But the other man, the tiny man, seemed to be very excited, very happy. And he said, don't be sorry, my dear sir. Okay? Nothing upsets me today. And he says, you should be happy, you should be celebrating because this is a very happy day. So Mr. Dursley, he was confused. He didn't understand why this man is so happy. Okay? And then he stood there for some time and then he hurried to his car and set off for home. And so he reached home. He was parking his car and then he saw that cat again. The cat that he saw in the morning. Now it was sitting on his garden wall. Okay? And the cat had that strange look even then. So Mr. Dursley tried to ward off the cat, but it did not move. The cat was looking, or rather staring, at Dursley. So after that, he went inside his home. He met his wife, but he did not tell her anything then. Mrs. Dursley seemed very happy that day. Okay? She was telling him the news that she had, some little bit of gossip. She was sharing all those small talk with her husband. And after some time, after dinner, Mr. Dursley went to their living room and he switched on the TV and he was listening to the evening news. And in the evening news, the news reports were talking about the owls, the flight of the owls, the unusual flight of the owls during daytime. Then, not only that, the news reports also told that there were shooting stars all over Britain. Okay, comets all over Britain. So that was also very unusual. The owls were flying all over Britain in places like the Kent, Yorkshire, etc. And not only that, there were shooting stars all over Britain. So Mr. Dursley was listening to all this and he stood very shocked. He was connecting all this, the cat, the owls, the people in cloaks, the shooting stars all over Britain, then the whisper about the Harry Potters. So all this was disturbing him very much. So then Mrs. Dursley came in with 2 cups of tea, and so he decided to introduce the topic. So he slowly asked, Petunia, dear, haven't you heard from your sister lately? Okay, do you have any news about your sister lately? He's asking her. And the mention of a sister suddenly changed the mood of Mrs. Petunia or Mrs. Dursley. And so she said very sharply, no. Why are you asking? Then Mr. Dursley said, you see, many strange things are mentioned in the news. Owls, shooting stars, lot of funny looking people. And Mrs. Dursley is asking, so what? What connection does it have with my sister? And then he asked her, they have a son, right? Your sister has a son, right? His name is Porter. And Mrs. Dursley says, yeah, I think so. She replies as if she's not that interested. And then he says, what is his exact name? Is it Howard? And then Mrs. Dursley replies, it's Harry. It's a very common name. It's a nasty name. And Mr. Dursley says, yeah, I agree with that. And after this, they decided to go and sleep. Mr. Dursley went to his bedroom. But before sleeping, he just looked out through the window and he saw that the cat was still there. Okay? He felt something very strange. Mrs. Dursley quickly fell asleep, but Mr. Dursley couldn't sleep so soon. He was thinking and thinking. And he was thinking, why should the porters come there? There was no reason that the porters will come in search of them. So, thinking about all this, he felt a little bit relaxed and he also slept. Then, now the story slowly shifts to the cat, which is sitting on the garden wall. The cat that Mr. Dursley noticed in the morning or in the evening, that strange cat. Now, this cat was sitting still as a statue, and its eyes were looking earnestly at the far corner of Privet Drive. The cat was looking, and just then a man appeared. A man appeared from the corner that the cat had been watching. And he appeared so silently but suddenly. Okay? So the cat became alert. Now, this man, he was very tall. He was thin. He was also old. You can see his silver hair and beard. Okay? He was wearing a purple cloak that swept the ground. And his eyes were very sharp. It was bright and blue. His nose was long. Okay? And this man, his name is Albus Dumbledore. It is only later that we understand who this Albus Dumbledore is. But as you are prescribed only the first chapter of this book, I'll tell you that he is actually the headmaster of Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. Now, Albus Dumbledore, he looked at the cat, which was staring at him. So he walked towards the cat and then he spoke to it. He tells the cat, fancy seeing you here, Professor McGonagall. Suddenly, in place of the cat, you see a woman. And she was also wearing a cloak. So the woman asks him, how did you know it was me? And he says, I've never seen a cat sit so stiffly. And then they talk to each other for some time. They talk about the celebrations that is going on. They talk about the flocks of owls, the shooting stars, everything. And Dumbledore says, yes, this is the time to celebrate because we have had precious little to celebrate for 11 years. That means he's saying, after 11 years, we are getting a precious reason to celebrate. And Professor McGonagall says, yes, I know that. Now, from their conversation, we come to know about Lord Voldemort. And from the words of Professor McGonagall, we understand that everybody is frightened of this person called Lord Voldemort, except Dumbledore. Except Dumbledore, everybody else seems to be frightened about Voldemort. And then she tells him, did you know about the rumor that is passing on? And Dumbledore asks her, what is that? And she says, it is said that Lily and James Potter are dead. And it seems Lord Voldemort killed them. And Dumbledore confirms it. It's not just a rumor, it's true. Professor is shocked. She says, I didn't want to believe it. And then she says, I also heard that Voldemort was trying to kill Potter's son Harry, but he couldn't. He couldn't kill that little boy. No one knows why or how, but they are saying that when he couldn't kill Harry Potter, Voldemort's power somehow broke, and that's why he's gone. Dumbledore just nods his head, and Professor continues. She's asking in wonder, in surprise. After all, he has killed many people, but how couldn't he kill a little boy? I cannot believe it. How in the name of heaven did Harry survive? Then Dumbledore says, we don't know. We may never know. And then Dumbledore takes a golden watch from his pocket, and he examines it. And then he tells, Hagrid's late. Okay? And Professor McGonagall, she rather confused. She asks Dumbledore, why are you here? What is the reason that you have come here to the street? And then Dumbledore says, I've come to bring Harry to his aunt and uncle because they are the only family he has left now. And the professor is very surprised to hear that. And she's asking, you mean the people who live here? And she says, no, no way. You can't, Dumbledore. I've been watching them all day. You couldn't find two people who are less like us. There are no people like us. They have got their son Dudley, and I saw him kicking his mother all the way up the street, screaming for sweets. Harry Potter, come and live here. No, that cannot happen. But Dumbledore tells very firmly, it's the best place for him. His aunt and uncle will be able to explain everything to him when he's older. And I've written them a letter. So Professor McGonagall, she cannot contain her curiosity and she's asking a letter. Really, Dumbledore? You think you can explain all this in a letter? These people will never understand him. He'll be famous, a legend. I wouldn't be surprised if today was known as Harry Potter Day in the future. There will be books written about Harry. Every child in our world will know his name. Dumbledore says, exactly. And then he says, it would be better if he stays here until he grows up and is able to understand everything. And then Professor McGonagall, she realizes that there is no way in arguing with this man, Dumbledore. He has decided everything. So she asks, okay, but how are you going to bring Harry Potter here? And then he says, Hagrid is bringing him because I trust him. I would trust Hagrid with my life. And then the professor asks, "Are you sure? Isn't he very careless?" And as the conversation goes on, you hear a very low rumbling sound, and that sound slowly grows and grows louder. And then you see a huge motorcycle fell out of the skies, out of the air, and it landed on the road in front of them. That motorcycle was huge, but the man sitting in it was even more enormous. He was almost twice as tall as a normal man and at least 5 times wide, 5 times fat as well. He was a huge, a big size, a gigantic figure. And he had long hair, bushy black hair, and his beard almost hid his face. His hands and feet and everything was so huge. And in his arms, in his muscular arms, he was holding a bundle of blankets. And in that, you can see a tiny baby. So Dumbledore asks him, "Hagrid, at last, and where did you get that motorcycle?" And Hagrid replies, "I borrowed it, Professor Dumbledore." And he says, "Young Sirius Black lent it to me." And Dumbledore asks, "No problems, were there?" And Hagrid says, "No, sir. The house was almost destroyed, but I got him out all right before the muggles started swarming around. He fell asleep as we was flying over Bristol." And so Dumbledore and Professor McGonagall bent forward and they looked into that bundle of blankets. And inside, there was a baby boy sleeping. It was a wonderful sight. The boy had thick black hair. His face was very bright, gracious. Now, under his black hair, on his forehead, there was a cut, and that cut resembled a lightning bolt. So, Professor McGonagall is asking, "Is this where?" And Dumbledore says, "Yes, he'll have that scar forever." And then Dumbledore takes the baby from Hagrid and he turns towards the Dursleys' house. And then Hagrid asks Dumbledore, "Could I say goodbye to him, sir?" And he bends over Harry, the baby, and he gives him a kiss. And then suddenly, Hagrid started crying, and Professor McGonagall scolds him. "Shh, you'll wake the muggles." And Hagrid, sobbingly, he says, "I'm sorry, but I can't bear to see this. Poor little Harry, he lost his parents. His parents are dead. And poor this child, he is going to live with this muggles." Muggles refers to the Dursleys. And then the professor says, "Yes, you're right, but we have to accept that." So Dumbledore stepped onto their garden wall and walked towards the front door, and he gently laid Harry on the doorstep. He took a letter out of his cloak and he tucked it in Harry's blankets. And then he came out. He came back to Hagrid and McGonagall. And for a full minute, the three of them stood there and looked at that little bundle. Hagrid was crying. Professor McGonagall was also sad. Even Dumbledore's eyes showed that grief. And then Dumbledore says, okay, fine. Now we have no more business here. We'll go and we'll join the celebrations. And so they greet each other. Hagrid wipes his tears. He gets into his motorcycle. He kicks on the engine, and with a roar, he rose to the air into the night. And McGonagall and Dumbledore also bids goodbye to each other. And then Dumbledore walked back to the street, and just before leaving, he looked back at that bundle of blankets and he says, "Good luck, Harry." And then suddenly he vanishes. And there was a breeze, and Harry Potter rolled in over inside his blankets without waking up. And next to his hand was that letter that Dumbledore has kept. So he was sleeping peacefully. He was not knowing anything that happened, not knowing that he was very special, not knowing that he was famous, not knowing that people are celebrating for him. He was sleeping peacefully. And then, all over the country, people wearing cloaks, they were celebrating. And they were saying, "To Harry Potter, the boy who lived." Okay, so this is the story, the summary of chapter 1, The Boy Who Lived. Hope you enjoyed.